This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.
What's shaking, you guys? Welcome back to the Let's Go Win podcast. I have a gentleman coming in live from Mexico. This guy is awesome. Daniel Mangena is a successful entrepreneur, best-selling author, podcast host of Do It With Dan and Beyond Success. He's a life and business transformation coach and an international public speaker. He has helped thousands of people across the globe achieve wealth mastery and truly abundant lives. Featured on CNN, CBS, Fox, the Jack Canfield Show, and in Forbes and Entrepreneur magazines, Daniel's mission is to spread his teachings worldwide with the intention to spearhead an evolutionary uplift in universal consciousness by awakening people to the importance of their unique role and enabling them to manifest their dream life. Well, brother, that sounds good to me. Let's do some of that, man. How you doing?
I always find it so awkward. I keep asking my team to cut the bio down because it's like, okay, I'm going to sit here while someone talks about me. But you know what? There's something about that. Like, why do we get uncomfortable hearing good stuff about ourselves? Why do I get uncomfortable hearing good stuff about me? I'm going to be exploring that, I think.
Yeah, let's explore that a little bit, brother. You've done some good things. You're helping a lot of people. We should celebrate that fact. And give me like the 2 to 5 minute background on how you got to do what you do, which is helping thousands of people, probably more than that, around the world do these amazing things. Talk to me about that.
You know, Jay, there's some people that come to this kind of work and they're like, oh, I was in my corporate job in my cubicle, I was in my corner office, and one day the heavens opened and I got I didn't have any of that. I've always worked for myself. Had some wins, had some losses, you know, that's the way that it goes. But at the time of this coming into my life, I'd recovered from a very dark time in my life. I had a really dark period of time where I had suicidal ideation. I rebuilt myself out of that and life was good. I had a beautiful home in London. I was traveling first class to hang out with my mates in different parts of the world. I had a tailor. I only worked a few hours a week and was making, you know, over £1 million a year. And yet, this knocking on the door kept coming, oh, but you know, all that stuff that you went through before, it's here for another purpose. And I was like, yeah, I kind of like this bubble. This is a safe bubble. I don't really want to come out of this bubble right now. And it took me having a very profound meditation experience. This was February of 2018 that let me see that even though everything was good, there was something more on the other side of it. And so I walked away from that experience, which I could only describe as what I think the metaverse is going to be at some point. It was a fully immersive virtual reality experience. I saw literally my entire life flash before my eyes, not in a negative way, but in a positive way. And I was like, wow, I've been giving this up. I need to get to this. And I walked away from the business that I'd built up that was doing very, very well. And I came literally with no intention of making a business out of this. I didn't intend to, you know, do all of, I just wanted to share the story, share the message. And I didn't care what my life would look like whilst I was doing that. And here we are, you know, we do get to support a lot of people. Things are really, really cooking. Off to Richard Branson's private island tomorrow at the time of recording to go and mastermind and speak to some leaders. I got quoted by Oprah a couple of weeks ago. I've got a documentary going on, got brought into another film studio as a producer. There's some really, really cool stuff happening that means I get to impact more people's lives. But again, I hadn't actually intended to do any of this. I just knew that the stories had to be shared, that the experience had to be shared. And I followed the nudge and went to do that.
Well, clearly it's worked. You've been on some major networks. I mean, if Oprah says your name, brother, like, okay, that's pretty damn cool. What's fascinating is, so you have this meditation experience. And again, I'm a huge advocate of meditation. My audience is probably tired of hearing me talk about why it's so important in my life. But talk to me about that particular time, how this happened. Was it something different? Because obviously anybody that's listening, I want to do that. I want to go exactly what Daniel did. And I want to see, man, what can I do to truly impact the world? Not just make over £1 million, which For Americans, that's like what, $1.5 million a year or so?
1.3, 1.4, something like that.
Okay, somewhere in there. That's a lot of money, man. You're making good coin. You're having a great time, yet it wasn't necessarily fulfilling what you're doing today. So talk to me about that.
So yeah, again, it's like I wasn't unfulfilled at the time. And this is what makes me laugh when I reflect on the experience. I didn't feel a gap. I didn't feel less than. I was, taking care of my body. I was, doing jiu-jitsu, working out, I was feeling good. I developed amazing relationships with my family, a great set of friends. There wasn't a missing piece, but this is again, that makes me, sometimes we think that we see the whole picture and there's something more available. And this isn't to talk down to people that are feeling some emptiness or lack of fulfillment. I get it. I've been there also, but at this point in my life, everything just worked. And it just reminds me of this whole idea of expansion and the fact that there is the universe is always growing and expanding. There's always something more available to us. And I truly believe it was a level of gratitude, enjoyment, and peace that I had with where I was that actually gave me the space to see something else. Because I think we have to be in a space of fullness in order to, what's the thing I say? Like, we have to be full before we can overflow, right? And I truly believe it's because I got to a point where I was full within myself that the divine was able to say, okay, here's a little more for you to go and pour into others. I don't think I would be able to have had, relatively speaking, the amount of flow and ease and grace I've had, like the synchronicities, like even this trip that I've got to Necker Island, which is something I've wanted to do for as long as I can remember, and getting the opportunity to speak in front of these awesome thought leaders. It was a woman that I met at a networking event I went to 3.5 years ago. She's just someone I checked in on, like, hey, how you doing? No, come and buy my stuff. No, how you going to work with me? It's just, you're a cool human. Like, I've just given her some advice and support here and there with stuff that was going on with her. No intention of anything other than just helping a good person go out and have impact in the world. And she calls me up one day. She goes, I've got a really cool person for you to meet. I'm like, all right, cool. I don't research people before I meet them. I just go and show up at myself. I meet them and I check afterwards. So I meet with this guy. He's like, yeah, I was like, what? I check him out afterwards. This guy's like best mates with this person, best mates with that person, has that resource, that connection. And again, because of how I showed up, he's like, hey, we've got a mastermind for 7-figure business owners to earn $1 million a year. Yes. Okay. Come and join this mastermind. I get into the mastermind. There's all these cool people here. And he's like, oh, by the way, we go here every year. Do you want to come? I'm like, yeah, right. But it's just how we show up. I mean, the law of attraction, I think, simplifies things a little too much for people to get the true power of what the law of attraction really is. But ultimately, our state of being, which isn't just our thoughts, it's also our actions, our behaviors, the energy field that we're putting out, which is why things like meditation are so powerful. That creates this resonant field that allows us to call in really, really cool things in ways that we wouldn't even imagine, from places we wouldn't even see them coming from. And in my case, it continues to lead to really cool things. But again, bringing it back to where I started, I firmly believe it's because I was whole and complete as I was that the divine was able to pour more into me. Had I been in a space of lack, I don't know what the journey would have been.
Well, I'm excited for you. Necker Island with Sir Richard Branson. I mean, look, you're from England. That means a heck of a lot more being a sir than it does to me. But the guy's remarkable. So I can't wait to hear how your trip goes. I'm fired up for you. I want to ask you, and then we'll dive into some of the things that you're really doing to help people with really succeeding in life. But brother, you went from England and you're like, yeah, I guess I'm going to go to Mexico and I'm going to go live there. That's like a pretty significant move, especially this thriving business. Like, as you said, all your buddies back home. Mexico is quite different than the UK. So talk to me about the mindset there, man, and what a journey you chose.
Have you ever read the book, The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer?
This is okay. No. And last night at a networking event, somebody took me like by the face and was like, JM, you have to read this. Now I've read Untethered Soul, but never The Surrender Experiment.
Read The Surrender Experiment. The Surrender Experiment blows Untethered Soul out of the water. The writing quality is different. For me, Untethered Soul, great, powerful book, a bit heavy and a bit clunky. I can tell he had a ghostwriter for The Surrender Experiment because the flow is just beautiful. But the surrender experiment takes you through the story of to how he got to be the person that could write Untethered Soul, if that makes sense, right? And so I read that book in 2017. And so in 2018, when I made the decision to jump fully into this work, over that summer, I did my own surrender experiment. And so what was happening was my very first workshop I delivered teaching my work on the 15th of July, 2018. And that was in New York. And it's so funny because I was like begging people, hey, will you come to my workshop? I paid for this space and yeah, come to the workshop. Hey, do you know anyone that wants to come? Right. And I was doing that for months, maybe even months. I was doing that just literally on my own dime, flying to the Middle East, to Asia, to different parts of Europe, to different parts of the States, renting a space and basically just begging people to come so that I could share the work with them. And of course, it built a little steam. People like, hey, my friend told me about the workshop. I'm going to bring 50 people. I'm going to bring 100 people. I'm going to bring 30 people. Can you come? And after a while, people will pay for your flight and they pay for you somewhere for you to live and whatnot. But at the beginning, it was on my own steam. And as I was doing that, some friends of mine who live in another part of Mexico, I live in Cabo now, but they're in another part of Mexico, they were going to Australia for 6 months. They're like, hey, our house is going to be empty. You're doing a lot of stuff in the US. There's direct flights from our town into, at least to Houston, Texas. From there, you can go wherever you need to go. Look after the house if you want. We've got a pool, we've got a maid, like gated community, you're going to be fine. I'm like, all right, cool, dope. And so I was based out of Mexico, basically dotting back and forth to different places. And then it was October. I hadn't intended to be in Mexico. I actually wanted to go to Asia. I love the quiet islands out in Thailand, like Koh Phi Phi and stuff. But because a lot of the events and opportunities were showing up in the US, a full-on 24-hour, 27 journey to get for everything wasn't really going to work. And so I wasn't really sure what was going to happen. I was kind of just playing with things. Again, I was running through savings and doing things on my own steam. I wasn't selling anything. There was no programs or coaching. I was just literally sharing the work. And so it seemed sensible to set up shop somewhere where it's a little bit more economical in terms of living costs and where I've got the flexibility to hang around. Because the US, I think at the time with the visa that I had, I could do like 90 days or something like that at a time. And so I park up at their place, dotting back and forth. And then it was in October of that year, I'd actually taught a workshop in West Palm Beach, Florida. I got invited to come up and speak to, I think about 30 people or something like that. And I was meant to go back to San Luis. And then my friend Andrea and her husband at the time, Paul, were like, hey, we've got some really cool places for you to come and potentially do some workshops here in Cabo. Just come check it out. We'll fill the room up. We just want you to come and show your work. We love your work. I'm like, all right, cool. No, come. It's like, yeah, cool. I'll get there. I've got things to do. I've got to be in, I think I had to be in Seattle the next week or whatever. They're like, no, just don't go back to San Luis. Come to Cabo. You can stay with us. We live on the beach. You don't need to worry about paying for somewhere to live. Just get here. You can go back to San Luis afterwards. I'm like, all right, cool. So I fly from Palm Beach, Mexico City out to Cabo. And that 3-day trip turned to 10. And then I went up to Seattle, did engagement. Then I had to be in Sedona that week. I did the thing in Sedona. Then I had the thing in Denver. And then I was like, you know what? I want to go back to Cabo. Now I went back because my life was a suitcase, a backpack, and a suit carrier, and I just took it with me when I went, right? And so yeah, I came to Cabo, and then I just kept going and coming back to Cabo for all my things. I was living out of a hotel for a year, and yeah, I'm permanent resident of Mexico now. I met my wife in the States, dragged her down to Mexico. I've got a kid. He was born here in Mexico. So yeah, this is that was a journey, but it literally was, hey, come and check this place out. And I ended up not leaving. I
mean, look, Cabo's a pretty awesome place. You have a lot of stuff to do. So I get it, man. What a free I love that. Let's talk about your work, brother, because obviously you are helping people and in the intro, but I want to know, man, like you have something called money DNA. And I don't know how much that ties into all your work because I don't know all your work, but talk to me about what you're doing, because obviously you went from, hey, come to my show, come to my speaking engagement to now I'm being flown around the world to go help people. You're helping people in a big way. How? What are you doing, man?
Oh, thank you for that. Well, when people ask what I do, and I've got time, not the elevator pitch, because we're having a chat here. I always ask a question. Say, look at nature. What do we look at nature? Look at nature. Is there anywhere that there is anything other than abundance in nature? And when we reflect on it, we see the only time that situation changes, Jay, I'm sure, is when humans get involved. When humans get involved, we can mess up in it. But even when we get involved with all our humanness, nature still recalibrates and moves back into space of abundance. If there's a crack in it, if we put concrete slabs in nature, it'll grow around it. We make a crack in that concrete, nature's going to come and it's always seeking overflow. That's the natural state of nature. Even when we look at us as humans, our physical death is a result of growing stopping. We're always growing, we're always expanding. Growth and overflow is a natural thing of nature. So why do we as humans not carry that message into how we live our lives every day? When I look at the war going on in Yemen, the war going on in the South Sudan, the war going on in Ukraine, all of these things are humans in a space of lack trying to subjugate, take, and control other people. Yeah, there's politics underneath, but we're talking about the gut raw underneath it thing. When you look at corporate greed, okay, I'm not talking about entrepreneurship, I'm talking about corporate greed. When you look at infidelity in relationship, is where's the next sex coming from? I need to grab this one, even though I've got someone at home. All of these ideas coming from a space of lack. And so what I do, JM, is I empower people to reactivate the connection to their natural state of abundance. And from that place, take that ability and direct it to other areas of their life. I use money for that because it's measurable. If I say I'm going to make you more happy, there's no way for us to know if I've done the job or not. You can say you're not happy, but maybe you are. You can say you are, maybe you're not. But if we sit down and say, okay, I'm going to support you in taking yourself from 0 to 1.6 billion, which is what we do with our signature program. You're either going to do it or you're not. If we say we're going to get you to financial freedom for you is $5,000 a month. Okay. Did we do it? Yes. Did we not do it? No. There's nowhere for me to hide with a story or an excuse. It either happened or it didn't. But manifestation, creation, it's the same regardless of what we're creating or manifesting. And so all that we do is take that capacity, which we've honed, trained, and developed around money, and deploy it in the rest of our lives too.
Well, look, abundance is a huge word for me, and it's not something that I think I naturally knew. And maybe you did, brother. Maybe you came out of the womb and you're like, look, the world's abundant. This is how it is. I didn't necessarily grow up that way, and possibly that's the conditioning that I received in scarcity versus abundance and all that the world has to offer, which truly is how my eyes operate today. Not always, right? I have my moments. I try to operate in that abundance mindset. Is this something that you have just naturally understood?
No.
Or is this something that you learned over time?
So I think sometimes we confuse the word money or wealth or prosperity and abundance. They're two different things for me. All right. One of the principles I teach is the triangle to abundance, and that's scarcity, stability, freedom, and abundance. So we move from scarcity into stability, stability into freedom, freedom into abundance. So scarcity is when I'm not mentally, physically, and emotionally able to live life on my terms in a stable way. When I'm stable, I'm able to do that, but it requires my time and energy exchange. So it requires me to be working in my business, to be actively creating income, to be freelancing or whatever, in order to have that stability. Freedom is I'm living life on my terms without needing to exchange time and energy. Maybe I've got a business that runs after itself. Maybe I've got investments. Maybe I've got real estate, whatever the thing is. And then abundance is I've got more than my needs met, but it doesn't require my time and energy exchanged for it. Okay. So there are people who are making $1 million a month and are in scarcity. Maybe they're burning out. Maybe emotionally they're disconnected from what they're doing and they feel dead inside. Or maybe their cost of living is higher than $1 million a month, and so therefore they're not able to enjoy it. Okay. So it's not about having a lot of money. It's about having resources to live life on your terms, have sufficient overflow beyond that to be able to share and be of contribution. And also having the choice about whether or not you're going to exchange your time and energy. I don't have to work as it stands. All right. My work doesn't feel like work. I'm nourished and I'm filled up by it. I get to meet awesome humans like you, JM, and your audience. I get to do that every day because I choose to. I also get to be of contribution, right? And I also still get to live life on my own terms. That's abundance. I've had money in the past. I've had success, but it wasn't on my own terms necessarily. And I certainly wasn't mentally and emotionally cognitive of the fact that I was doing stuff on my own terms and that I could be of contribution. So there's a specific combination of circumstances and setup that for me needs to be there to be in abundance, but it certainly wasn't something that came naturally. Definitely was something that I had to learn. And it's something that I'm really, really feel blessed I get to share with people every day.
Well, I want people to learn more from you and I want them to go see it, but let's just say, because I don't think of abundance just as money. In fact, I've met so many wealthy people that are broken and hurt and really miserable human beings, truth be told. So that for me is not necessarily but I understand the tangible outcome as you can produce to show, hey, I was able to help you get from here to there. But let's just work on going from, let's say, scarcity to that fourth step of abundance. What's the biggest piece of advice you'd give someone? Is it being quiet? Is it going back out in nature? What is it, Daniel, for you that's allowed you to continue to be so in tune with this abundance mindset?
I think there are two things. You alluded to one, that's money DNA. So money DNA is a teaching, and to explain this, I always reference my kid, Ethan. So Ethan's 16 months old now, about to be 17 months old. You can see I'm got chocolatey hue, I've got black hair, got brown eyes, right? My wife's Russian, so you know what that means. She's blonde and blue-eyed, right? So just like all of them. So when we found out that she was pregnant, we didn't know what Ethan's going to look like, right? What color his eyes going to be? Who knows? Could be anything. What is he going to be? Lighter? Is he going to be darker? What's his hair going to be? Is it going to be more curly? Is it going to be more straight? Like, no idea. And the crazy thing is, there's nothing that we could have done to change what that inception point had given as a divinely ordained combination of little human, right? Turned out that he's got sort of caramel skin that catches the sun. So he's a little bit darker because we live in a hot country. He might be a bit more pale in a colder country. He's got little blondie curls, little blondie brown curls, and he's got brown eyes. All right. That outcome was predetermined by his DNA. All right. And when we look at people's financial situation and we look at how they receive anything in their world, by the time we're physically experiencing it, the things that actually lead to that experience have already happened. Okay. Your actions and choices, your emotional state, your mindset and beliefs. If people don't believe in the woo-woo, we can take this straight to science. 97% of our actions are happening at the unconscious level. They're unconsciously dictated actions, habits, and behaviors. All of our outcomes are the result of what we do. We can talk about, as much magic as we want. At the end of the day, our environment, our actions, our choices directly correlate to what we experience in our life every single day. So purely scientific, we got that at the energetic side. We've got our frequency dictates what we magnetically call in. So whichever side of the fence you sit on, it's still the same thing. Your outcomes are predetermined before you actually have the outcome. However, we can actually look at some of the things that are leading to some of these regular outcomes in our life. And what we do with Money DNA is we've got 5 key areas that we look at. And in those 5 key areas, we've got a series of different questions and different psychometric tests that we do to assess where in those 5 areas people can optimize their flow with money. But here's a really cool thing. It becomes how they optimize their flow with anything that they want to create. If we look, example, at someone's human design, just based on the type, I can say how you should be approaching wealth creation or creation of any outcome. Someone who, for example, in human design is a projector, for example, them trying to push and force outcomes and go and make stuff happen, you're actually creating a disconnect, a discombobulation and dissonance in your energy field, which is going to make it a lot harder for you to create things, which can manifest in burnout a lot easier. It can manifest in just being, run down, versus understanding that as a projector, you can set an intention, get really clear on your vision, and then energetically, you're perfectly positioned to wait for what shows up clearly as a request, an invitation, or an informing. And you can just save so much energy by not running out and doing things, right? Whether that's a relationship, whether it's the right option for your health, or whether it's a business opportunity. And so we map those out for people and we show them where the flow is. So when you're in the flow, guess what you're going to get? More results. More results leads to mental evidence that you're on the right path, mental evidence that this works. Okay, so now your belief systems open up. Oh, maybe this is real. Maybe this does work. That creates more momentum, more flow, more momentum, more flow. And it becomes a self-perpetuating, self-fulfilling prophecy for you to have success. So that's the number one thing. Know yourself. Know where your flow exists. Success leaves clues. One of my mentors, Greg Reed, says, look at where you've had success. What circumstances have led to success? Where do you feel best? What kind of, look at your friends. Do you feel drained or do you feel nourished? Right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
All of these things are going to be impacting you. So that's the first thing. Know yourself, know where your flow is, and just honor that and drop everything that doesn't leave you in a space of flow. And the second thing is this, and this is a lesson that I learned making and losing 2 multi-million-pound fortunes by the age of 23 years old. You don't know everything, specifically because you don't know what you don't know. So be open to guidance, be open to counsel, not opinions. Another one of Greg's saying is seek counsel, not opinions, because counsel is someone who's been where you want to go or has taken people to where you want to go, right? Mike Tyson's coach wasn't a heavyweight boxer, but he sure made a beast of a heavyweight boxer. So you know that that person knows how to get you where you want to go, right? Be open to learning from places that you didn't think you could learn from. Right? The humility to learn from children, the humility to learn from your mistakes, the humility to learn from the wins of others, openness to learning from others, guidance, counsel, mentorship, coaching, number one. And number two, know yourself. Knowing yourself is going to make that counsel more effective because you're going to know which counsel is going to be aligned with you. And you're going to know how best to deploy the advice that you're going to get from them. So those are the two things I would say have supported me. And I've seen time and time again, it's been awesome for the people that we get to serve.
Well, it makes a ton of sense. And I have so many questions, but I was chuckling in the beginning because my wife is Asian. I'm 6'5", white guy with blue eyes. And we're like, what is our kids going to look like? And all we wanted was the kids to have her dark skin and my blue eyes. They came out with my skin and brown eyes. I guess my question, man, because this seems to be so easy for you. This isn't something you learned in school, I'm guessing. Mm-hmm. You mentioned mentors. I think you said his name was Greg.
Greg Reed.
Mm-hmm. Having guides and people that are being open to that. How is this something that you again acquired from them? Some of their teachings, some is just come to you in these moments of quiet. Because, brother, the way you explain it is brilliant. I'm like, yeah, man, that makes a ton of sense. You didn't learn this in school. That's not how this came about, I'm guessing. Mm-hmm. So talk to me about that process of learning.
Mm-hmm. First and foremost, pain for me. So that's been a big part of the process. But all jokes aside, I read Think and Grow Rich when I was 16 years old. So I was quite a precocious young man. At the time of 19, making my first million, I was listening to tapes from Nightingale Conant. I was reading books like Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. I was studying Plato and Aristotle. I was an avid, I've always been a reader. The challenge for me was at the time, I didn't have the humility that comes with experience. And so I arrogantly, in my youthfulness, thought I knew everything, which is what led to my failures earlier. And so it was after the 2 losses and rebuilding myself that I came to an understanding that, oh, hang on a minute, maybe I don't know everything. Maybe I haven't got this whole thing worked out. And I started to explore that whole path of seeking counsel from others. Well, these people wrote these books. Well, they probably know more than me. There are other people that maybe haven't written books, but they've got information that could be of service. And that's when I deeply started my personal development. I say 22 years I've been reading and learning. But the personal development journey for me has been about 13 years of really diving into allowing people to show me the way. I had guides, going back then, but I didn't listen to them because I thought, do you know who I am? Look what I've done, blah, blah, blah. But it took the pain of loss and the pain of life really showing me through visual circumstances that you don't know everything. That now, last year I did over $300,000 on my personal development last year. That's, masterminds, coaching, programs, events, and experiences. I don't know what the tally is so far this year. Probably not going to be as high. I had a couple of particularly big investments I made in myself last year, but I always do a minimum of 100,000 a year in personal development. And that's really making sure that the people who at the top of their field and who take people to the top of their fields are who I look to for how could I show up? How can I be best? And I love to go into a room and be the dumbest person in the room. I'm going to go and be the brokest person on a private island. I'm going to be probably the person with the least experience. I'm going in there assuming that I know nothing. Even when someone tells me something that I think I know, I'm assuming that I know nothing. They say you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen more than you talk. And that's what I'm going to be doing this weekend. That's what I always seek to do in my life. And I think that's been what's enabled me and empowered me to receive great wisdom from people who have definitely gone ahead of me, even though I started my learning journey a lot younger in life.
Well, I just want everybody to make sure they heard that. He spent $300,000 on personal development and growth. And this is what he does for a living. I'm the crazy one in my group because I was at a mastermind last week. I was at, 1 month before that. And I think I've spent like 15 or 20 grand so far this year. And in my circle, that's people are like, why do you do that? Because it fulfills my soul. And I don't know shit, man. I mean, I'm trying. I know a couple things, but I have so much to learn. One of the things you mentioned, and I love the way you talked about the science and then woo-woo, which we welcome the word woo-woo on our show because I don't care. It works. It is what it is.
It does work.
I want to ask you, there's a topic and it's getting your emotional energy aligned with abundance. And you talked about the projector and, just through sheer force, trying to make things happen. That's not alignment. So can we talk about how do you get your emotional energy aligned with abundance?
Again, this is going to depend person to person. And it's also going to look at the particular circumstances that you've had that have given you the illusion that you're out of that alignment, right? Because abundance is always there, but we're not always aware, we're not always attuned to it. And so the path to that realignment is going to be different from person to person. Someone who's had a lot of trauma in their body, for example, is probably going to need to address that in order for them to reconnect to it. Someone who's been in an environment that's been mentally repressive, someone talking down to them all the time or making them feel belittled, is probably going to have some mental stuff that they're going to have to do, some healing around that and some forgiveness around that. And so what I always invite people to do is to look at where the sticky states are. Where are those blocks? What's holding you back viscerally that you can taste, see, and touch? Start there. Begin to follow those breadcrumbs, and it's going to start to open you up. And the more that you can start to heal that, the more you can start to open up to those breadcrumbs, the more readily you're going to move into flow with where the good stuff is, because it's there, right? We're walking alongside the river of abundance. Saying, where's the abundance? It's right there, and it's ready for you to dip into it and to carry you along all the way home.
Abundance is always there. That's a radical idea, honestly, because again, I feel like I understand abundance, but when you said that, I'm checking my mind frequently saying, I'm not operating that way. So that's pretty fascinating. I want to dive in a little bit because again, your failures that you had, I want to go through the process and your thought and your mindset. So young guy making 7 figures a year, knows it all, kind of gets his teeth kicked in.
Yeah.
Back up, does it again. But there's some grit, there's some perseverance, and maybe it's just knowing abundance. How were you able to do that? Talk to me about your mindset after getting kind of knocked down pretty good to get back up and not only, succeed, but thrive. Look at how much you've thrived. It's pretty remarkable.
Well, thank you. Well, the first time I would say it was the arrogance of youth. Okay. It was just like youthful arrogance, like, yeah, all right, cool. That happened. I'm going to go and do it again. The second time I did get knocked for 6, I was taken out. Like I said, I went into deep, dark suicidal ideation. The only reason why I didn't make an attempt, JM, is because at the time I felt like such a loser that if I attempted to suicide, I'd fail. And I couldn't bear with another failure. I was like, I try this, I'm going to be a failure. The idea of people standing around me if I tried to use pills and my stomach's pumped, I'm in at the hospital, and I couldn't do that. And if I'd get the wrist cutting wrong, there's going to be marks forever that I'm this loser that couldn't even cut his own. I'm blessed that I was in the UK and not somewhere where I had access to a gun. Because if I had access to a gun, I wouldn't be here now. Because that felt like the only way that if I put a gun here and pulled the trigger, that it'd be done. That was the only thing that I felt any confidence in. And so what actually happened is when I look at it now, it makes me laugh in a really gallows humor kind of way. I set off to work out how not to be so much of a loser so that I could successfully pull off my suicide.
Wow.
So I went on this journey. Yeah. So I went on a journey for a good, I would say from the time that that journey began to when I kind of became aware of the fact that I'd been on a journey that was actually healing, about 7 or 8 years, where all I was doing was going back into my books because I needed to understand where had I got it wrong. Because on reflection, things had shown up, but they hadn't stayed. So I kind of had it down a little bit, but I didn't have it down completely. And so I asked myself, all right, how much of what I've been spewing for the last however many years is real and how much of it's poppycock, right? Because I've been running around saying, I'm the man, I've got the code to the universe, I don't need to listen to what you've got to say. And here I am at a dismal loss. And so for those years, all I was doing was reading books, listening to tapes. I learned to transliterate Hebrew and Arabic so I can go into ancient texts. I was reading ancient wisdom, reading biographies of people, looking at the source material, cross-checking it, because I had to understand where I had got it wrong. Or if this is all BS, then it's all BS, fine. But I needed to know for myself. And the only way that I've been able to describe it, and it's a friend of mine who actually came up with this phrasing, is I accidentally overanalyzed myself out of suicide. And then in the space of that overanalysis, I positively polluted myself so greatly with content of a positive nature, there was no space for the darkness of desires of suicide to rest, because we can't hold thoughts that are out of alignment with our emotional state. And we can't be in an emotional state that's out of alignment with the amount of input, with the quality of the inputs, the quality of our environment. So because that's all I was doing, I wasn't having conversations about anything else. I was obsessed with not being a loser. I accidentally changed my inputs, changed my internal environment, woke up a couple of years later, and I was like, hang on a minute. I haven't been ideating about suicide. I've not been depressed. My life actually works. It feels good now. And that's when I started the journey of backtracking and looking at what that journey was. And that became my work beyond intention. And all of the work we do now is built off of that experience and off of those lessons. So that the way that I accidentally created my life has now been the way that I continue to consciously create my life, because I've seen the darkness that you can come from when you follow a few simple steps and change the way that you're showing up, even if you don't want to. Because remember, I didn't go into this saying, I want to heal myself, I wanted this, I wanted that. No, I was in the darkest place that you can be. And just because of these changes, that unconscious program, that unconscious vision that I had for myself shifted. And even when I wasn't trying to, my entire life changed as a result.
Thank God you fed your soul with all this amazing. It's to teach yourself Hebrew and Arabic. You're a really fascinating guy, which is going to lead me to two questions I have to ask just because I'm interested.
Mm-hmm.
What is your thought on ayahuasca, some of the plant medicines? Because a lot of people, they seem to reach some subconscious level through that. I've never done it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of folks on my show that talk pretty positively about it. I'm just curious from you're a bright guy. What thoughts do you have on ayahuasca and plant medicines to achieve some of these things?
I'm a traditionalist in terms of I look at respecting traditions and where they came from, right? So my family's from Zimbabwe in Southern Africa. My parents emigrated to the UK about 6 years before I was born. They migrated in the 70s. Dad wanted to get the next level in his education. He brought my mum and the kids, my older brother and sister. We've got medicine men, medicine women in our part of the world. And since then, I've got to travel to other parts of the world and meet other ancient wisdoms and mystics and medicine people. And they go through a lot of training to get to where they are. I've had the opportunity to meet elders from other cultures also. And certain medicines, such as ayahuasca and other medicines, are something that happen after a certain level of initiation and certain training to move through to a next stage. All right. And so there's a medicine man who's from Southern Africa called Credo Mutwa, who describes that he had a particular medicine after like 10 or 15 years of training under his tutor. You know, they really went really quite deep. Ayahuasca is another medicine that was given from teacher to student in certain traditions to move them to the next level of their training so that they could serve. It wasn't something that was given to the general people. Now, in a way, I think it's beautiful, much like in medieval Europe, you know, scripture was kept out of the hands of the common man by putting it in Latin, and then it was made available. But I think there's a level of respect that not all people have. I can't speak to everyone. I've not met everyone. I know people who have gone into plant medicine as a part of their deep healing. They've gone in with you know, with sacred reverence, with a true shaman. But I personally know too many people who have never been trained. They've not gone through any tradition, spinning around calling themselves a shaman, and are charging $5,000 to take people on ayahuasca trips on the weekend and mushroom trips, right? My personal opinion, there's no shade, I don't respect that personally. Not that I don't respect the person, but that lack of reverence for something that for millennia has operated in a certain way for particular reasons. Hallucinogenics can be dangerous if you don't know what your situation is, if the person holding space for you doesn't know what they're doing. When you're messing around with other dimensions, you don't know what's going to come through. You know, medicine trips and holidays, vacations. Personally, I'm not down with it. I have done some work with a shaman. I've not done any plant medicine, but I have done some Kambo with a guy who's for 27 years has been in the jungle learning from the ancient masters, and he's a native of the region and studied at the University of Light down in Argentina. And I've done 20 years of stuff on myself. I didn't just wake up, have, you know, meditate for 5 minutes a day and think I'm going to go and be a shaman or whatever, right? It was, and I've had invitations for years to play with this kind of thing, but we sat down, he and I, and it was just an exploration. But the message was clear that it was my time to step up, because everything that was going on in the back of my mind about what I would love to work with on, if I went into that, while we're talking, he said, well, I don't know how you feel, but I feel called to tell you that this medicine can help with that, and this medicine can help with that, and this medicine can help with that. And I know myself, I know I get my truth thing I get a feeling in my gut and a warmth on this side of my head. And so I explored it. You know, we did certain dietary protocols and other things and certain preparation, but it's not something I'm going to do every weekend. It's something that I did at a time that I was called to do. And I did it with someone who's innately qualified and has been given lineage-led permission to serve in that capacity, if that makes sense.
Well, it makes a ton of sense, man. And you went into, I could talk to you for hours, man. You are just a fascinating human being. The gut and how in tune to your body and the universe is really how I would call it. Some people call it God, some people call it energy. For me, it's either energy or the universe, but you're so in tune with that. It's really remarkable. I want to just kind of, as we're wrapping the show up, I want to give you just free open mic here. Anything you want to share with the audience? I didn't know enough to ask that you're like, man, I got to share this before we end. Anything you want to share, Daniel?
I think what I'd love to share is that all too often we can take all of this stuff, we get really, really serious with it, and we can forget that ultimately, regardless of what the sub-purpose is, the purpose of life is to live. And living is not this closed, obsessed, it's an expressing, expanded experience of what life has to offer. And, you know, we never know when we're going to pop our clogs. We don't know how long we've got on this little green planet spinning around in space. But every day of it could be our last. Every moment could be our last. And so I just want to invite people to remember not to take all of this so seriously that you lose the experience, because we don't know when we're going, and none of us are getting out of this alive. I just want to just bring that note into the conversation, and that, again, abundance isn't something you have to hustle for. It's not something you have to kill for or strive for. it's something that's already there beside you, waiting for you to accept it and have fun playing on the journey of finding what that looks like for you as an individual.
That's brilliant advice, you guys. I mean, this guy is just your journey, your story. I understand why people want to be around you, man. And it's quite remarkable. I appreciate you so much. Where can our listeners connect with you online? They want to learn more about what you're doing, just to be around you. Where can they find you, man?
I'd say the best thing to do is to head over to dreamwithdan.com, dreamwithdan.com. We're getting back into a lot more regular virtual events. We're doing an in-person event again here in Cabo in May. We're going to be doing that one again in October. Really reasonable. All the things that we do. We've got the podcast information there, which obviously you're going to be a guest, so we'll make sure that we get some links to people for that. But yeah, just come along. We've got a lot of free resources. Some of the stuff I've done on TV and whatnot's on the media page. You can see what we're sharing out there in the mainstream. But just come along, play around, see what serves you, and do, get in contact. Let us know that you came from JM, and we'd love to see how we can support you in your journey.
You guys check it out. I love Cabo, so I'm going in May. Maybe I'll be with Daniel for both of them. Hey, man, I appreciate you being here, sharing so much wisdom and just love, man. I appreciate you. Thank you, sir. Really appreciate the opportunity to serve and to connect with you. Guys, go check it out. I hope, sincerely, I will be at one of those, either May or October. I hope some of my audience is with me. This guy is fascinating. He is just one of those unique individuals. So I want you to remember, until next time, your mindset matters. We will talk to you then. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.